welcome to Retro Warriors, episode 481.
Woo.
As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by Viable Human Chris Saturn.
Hi, Justin.
Hi, Saturn. We've made it to our
Yay.
show.
Hooray.
That is normal, and it's about normal things, and we talk
Right.
about normal things.
I don't
And
know
it's
what
all-
you're talking about, Justin.
I'm talking about the level of normalcy that we exude with this podcast.
Well, you were being very unnormal about it.
Unnormal?
Yeah.
Is that? I don't think that's
Anti-normal.
anti.
Innormal.
Yeah, anti-normal is when they're like, well, you're not quite antisocial, but you're definitely anti-normal. Okay, it's a new classification. In my head, I was like, surely we have housekeeping for this episode, but we don't. Things have been,
Relatively
well, I wanted to say
normal.
pretty normal, but they've been insanely busy for me. So,
No. Well, that is your normal
That's-
now.
yeah, I guess so. It's the new normal, right? It's great. Courtney came downstairs earlier, and she was just standing there, just like, you can just see someone panicking, you
Yeah.
know, even if they're not. And I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "We just have so much shit to do, and I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Well, you got to eat dinner first." And then she like goes off and does something else, and I had to take her and be like, "No, you have to eat dinner, and then we can be overwhelmed with shit to
Right.
do. But first, you got to eat a meal." So yeah, my week. It was my birthday. I had a birthday, and I'm 36 years young, which
That is
makes
pretty
me,
young, yeah.
by my own metrics, legally an old bastard.
A few
because
years
I
ago,
had-
actually, yeah.
Yeah, well, all right. And so, yeah, had a nice birthday, and one of our listeners, very kindly, Luke, sent me a copy of UFO 50.
Oh, nice.
Which is that new
Yeah.
kind of indie game
Collection-y thing.
multi-pack thing. Yeah, it's like a collection. And I what's weird is he had shared it in our Discord and was like, "Hey, there's this new thing out." And I was like, "That looks cool." And then someone I haven't talked to in like 5 years texted me and was like, "Have you heard about this game?" And sent me a link to UFO 50, and I was like, "No, are you still alive?" I didn't, like, what?
Was it me?
And I said, "Yeah, someone posted that in our Discord."
Yeah.
And he just responded with a thumbs up emoji, and then we were done speaking again. So I guess he's gonna check back in 5 more years.
That's how a healthy relationship works, yeah.
I've it's a very cute collection. It's all very much presented as like these are little old game diskettes that you're dusting off. There and all the games have been relatively fun.
Nice.
Definitely so far anyway. I mean, I've only uncovered maybe like 15 of them because you have to like the cartridges are all dusty and covered in cobwebs, and you have to like click them, and then it like blows the dust off. So like you dust them off.
Yeah.
None of them have really been. I see a lot of comparisons to NES games. None of them are really the level of depth and complexity that you would get from an NES game.
Right.
Like I see the homages that they're making. Like I was playing one that was very clearly like River City Ransom, Streets of Rage sort of mashup kind of thing, and like it's almost there, right? Like it all feels like like Kmart brand bubble,
Yeah. Like the 501 shareware disc versions of games.
Yeah, and so the games that are just like, oh look, it's like a little brawler, and it's supposed to kind of feel like River City Ransom, are less exciting to me than the games that do shit that I've never seen before.
Nice.
Because again, none of them are super deep, right? But there's this one I meant to boot it up and see what it was called. But it's so much fun. It is basically. I'm trying to think of even how to explain it. So like, it's like a competitive falling block puzzle, but the blocks fall left and right. And so on your side, instead of blocks, you have little guys that are like little spearmen or archers, and you basically have 4 lanes, and you're picking which lane they're popping into. And then as time ticks on, they keep marching to the right? And then your opponent is on the other side dropping guys that are coming from the left.
Yeah.
And if you can get a guy all the way to their side, then you score one of their flags, and if you destroy other flags, you win. Okay? But you don't get to pick when the blocks drop. There's a timer at the top of the screen. So wherever your cursor is, whenever that timer runs out, that's the lane the new character is going to drop into. And there's kind of a evolving rock, paper, scissors thing where certain units are better against certain other types of units. So it turns into this like speed chess, falling blocks, strategy, kind of weird mashup thing.
Yeah.
And I so desperately want them to make it into a full game because it's so much fun.
Nice.
Oh, it's so much fun. I don't know, like I don't have like the patience or the intelligence for like real strategy games.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like playing them, but something about like there being a hard time limit on. I think what happens is I get in my own head about strategy. Anything where I can really sit there and think, I will inevitably sabotage myself.
That sounds like you, yeah.
Yeah, but it's so high speed that like I don't have a chance to you know, my stupid brain doesn't have a chance to do anything. It's just my lizard brain making decisions. Anyway, it's a fun little collection. I saw it floated in the Discord. Someone was like, maybe this could be like the next Balatro, and I was like, I don't. It's not there for me. Granted, I'm not even halfway through all the games. Maybe I'm gonna the last half. I'm like, these are all fucking incredible. This is the must-have collection. But you know, for not much money, it's $25 for 50 games, and so far all of them have been at least a little bit fun.
Nice.
And it's just a cute, fun collection. It pays homage to like the Action 52s of the world, but in a way that isn't shitty or horrible, you know? And as a kid that grew up with a lot of multi-game collections, my mom would get those things from, do you remember the ABC catalog?
No.
It was just a mail order catalog, and they would sell these like game systems, like little knockoff, no-name brand game systems with like LCD screens, and they'd have like 50 games built in, and it'd be like Snake, rip off pole position. It's basically just like a slightly better Tiger handheld.
Right, yeah.
And I would get them all the time, like every Christmas. My mom would order them from this fucking ABC catalog. And so I have a weird amount of nostalgia for like serial number filed off game collections.
We would for a little while there, when we first got a PC with a CD-ROM drive, we would get those like 2001 shareware game collections.
Oh yeah. I had a few of those CD-ROMs. Yeah,
that's as close as I ever got, because after the second or third of those that we got, my mom was like, "All these are bad games, and they're not worth. I would rather spend the $10 extra and us get a good game."
Yeah.
So we
I think a lot of it was just single mom, 2 kids. She's just trying to find anything that will fucking occupy our time for less than the cost of a full priced video game. You know.
And also, she didn't play games herself, so she wasn't aware of the caliber.
Yeah,
of them.
so she didn't know what was good. She had no fucking idea. She's just like, 50 games is only $20. All right, So, but yeah, I think I'm not quite to the point that it's like a strong recommendation for me, but I'm very much enjoying it, and I'm enjoying exploring it. And so far, it's been real fun. And I've been having a good time with that. What have you been doing?
I finished Astrobot.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was like, it came out and everyone talked about it for like 2 days, and then I hadn't heard anything.
Well, it's because we made a thread in the Discord so that we wouldn't be just flooding it.
I must have missed the thread. Hold on, I'm going to find it now. I'm going to go in there and yell at you.
But yeah, it was good. I dug it. It was a good game. I would say it is on par with Nintendo's platformers generally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very high bar, but I would say that I've met it. Graphically, musically is very good. I talked about it on the last episode, I think, but I finished it, got to the end, a lot of cute little references. I do want to talk about a couple of things that are in there, though.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil all the different references because there's a lot of them, and that's really most of the fun of the game is seeing all these little references pop up. But there were a couple things. One, during one of the last levels, it has one of those little pop-ups that tells you what music is playing and where it's from.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it was from a Sega Saturn game.
Oh.
Which, for people who don't remember, is PlayStation's competitor.
Right. Thanks for that. It's just
it was definitely from a Thunder Force game. I think
All
it was
right.
one of the ones on Saturn. I could be wrong. Maybe it was a PS2 Thunder Force game. But either way, it just felt weird that that's the music. The only music in the game they point out at all happens to be from a franchise that was on Saturn.
How strange.
And then also one of the things that you can unlock is the ship from Defender, which
Okay.
which if you're not familiar, is a game that came out 15 years before the PlayStation existed.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And also I think it's the only property that Warner Brothers owns that is even referenced in the game. So like no Mortal Kombat or anything else that you might think of when you think of Warner Brothers game library. No, just the ship from Defender.
How odd.
Those are the weirdest references. Everything else kind of made sense and felt like, oh yeah, this is a PlayStation-y kind of thing. Like there's a lot of games that are referenced that were pre-PlayStation, but at least made appearances on most or all PlayStation consoles. But those couple, I was like, why? Why this? It just kind of struck me as odd.
That is odd.
But other than that, I'm still chipping away at the Castlevania DS collection.
Yes, I saw that you're on Portrait of Ruin now.
Yeah,
no,
I'm up to Order of Ecclesia now, which is the third one.
Okay, all right.
Which is good. It's still good. The localizations in these games are worse than I remembered, by a lot.
Yeah, they're.
But more importantly, these games, all three of them so far, have been more sexist than I remember.
Oh, all right then.
I get that these are 15 to 20 years old, but
right.
I didn't think
a game like I know Portrait of Ruin. It's a female protagonist. Was that the case in Order as well?
Yeah, Order and Portrait both have female protagonists.
Yeah, you think they'd be a little
in Portrait you have the
kinder.
In Portrait you have the male protagonist and the female protagonist that you switch between. And you'll get like iron armor, and I'm like, oh, she could really use that because her defense is low. No, she can't wear that.
But she's a lady, Saturn.
And then the next thing I would get would be like frilly corset. I'm like, hold on, sir. This is not very useful in combat.
Yeah, well, maybe she's trying to distract the enemy.
I guess. And then I'd be like, get like leather hat. And I'm like, oh, leather hat is useful. No, she can't wear that. She has to use the ribbon. And I'm like, this is...
Thanks, Konami.
Yeah, this is... Like, I thought we were mostly done with that by the mid-2000s, but I guess not. I had to wait a little bit later than that. So there is some of that still in the games. But other than that, they are still fun. They're still solid games, and I am enjoying it again.
Well, good. I keep meaning to have enough time to do everything I want to do. And that's on my list of things I want to do.
Yeah, as we're recording this, the new Zelda's about to come out. The new Silent Hill is about to come out.
Oh yeah, Zelda was today. Yeah,
and then we're a month-ish away from the Dragon Quest III reboot, and they keep dropping shit on me that I want to play. And I'm like, I just need more time. If everybody could please just stop for a little while. Give me time to play all these things I want to play.
I'm reaching the level of annoyance with it where, because it used to be like I would buy it and it would just sit on my shelf. Now I'm reaching the point where I just don't even buy it. I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah, I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah. Anyway, let's do the news. Mm-hmm. Italian authorities have broken up a counterfeit retro game ring worth 50 million euros.
Yeah, they had a bunch of the Super NES and NES games, and from what I was reading, I think they're repros.
Yeah,
but
that's what it seemed like.
I did not realize there would be some giant repro game ring. I thought we mostly just knew what repros were and didn't care.
Well, to be fair, a lot of repros are getting repros are an issue.
Yeah,
I think is the point I'm trying to make.
I get that. I just didn't. I guess I didn't realize how many people were just buying sight unseen a bunch of games.
A lot of it is because what happens is like if you go on AliExpress, you can buy giant stacks of repros, especially GBA repros,
right?
And
they're dirt cheap.
Yeah, and then just flip them on eBay.
That's true.
And so what I'm wondering is like, why were they doing it? Like, just buy them on AliExpress and flip them. Like, maybe that's what they were doing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is confusing to me.
It's very odd. And maybe that's what they were doing. They were selling it as legitimate, and maybe I didn't read enough into it, but still weird. Mega Man is being added as a character to Brawlhalla. That game I still have not looked at or checked out in any way. I think I looked it up one time on the Steam store page, and I was like, looks boring.
I had to look it up
it.
because of this news article to figure out what the hell it is. It is a Smash Brothers like, but without licensed
it's a Smash
characters.
clone.
Which the whole draw of Smash Brothers for me is the licensed characters. You take that out, and it's just a mediocre game.
Yeah. I didn't like the art style. It looked very much like a weird mobile game.
The art for Mega Man in it looks all right.
Yeah, I guess that art style just kind of fits for Mega Man in general.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Anyway. Final Fantasy producer Naoki Yoshida has asked fans not to make inappropriate mods for the PC release of Final Fantasy 16. Guess what? Guess what, buddy? You can't stop them.
So here's the thing.
Can't.
FF16 has several nude scenes in it.
Okay.
But the camera is always angled in just such a way that you don't see, the things that the sensors
the uglies
are most,
bumping.
Yeah. You can kind of see that. You just don't see the things the sensors are most concerned about. Like it's like watching soft porn on basic cable in the 90s.
Yeah, that's 90s Cinemax level.
You would occasionally see a butt, but you're not going to see a nipple. And so I'm guessing he just doesn't want people to take these models from the game and just like proliferate them or whatever. But they're gonna. However, the most prominent mods so far have just been fixing the port. So maybe they should have been more worried about that.
Yeah, the only mod I installed on Final Fantasy 15 put more clothes on one character. I found a modesty patch. Yes.
Nice.
Not even because I was that offended, just because it was such a stupid outfit for someone crawling around under cars.
Right.
Like, she would have road rash all over herself.
I just want a mod for Final Fantasy 15 that gives everybody the cup noodle hat.
It probably exists.
Oh, I hope so.
Also, as part of the same interview, he admitted that Final Fantasy 7 R and Final Fantasy 16 didn't meet profit expectations. And all I have to ask is, what the hell kind of expectations did you have if they didn't meet them? They sold gangbusters.
I think it's because they were locked on exclusively PlayStation that they didn't hit as much audience.
I'm sorry. Is this someone experiencing consequences for their actions?
Weird.
Oh, no.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
I just can't with these fucking people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sony paid them a lot of money to make these things exclusive, but it wasn't as much money as making all of the money.
Like, goddamn, if you want it to be exclusive, make it exclusive. Understand you're going to limit your market and move on. But you don't get to later be like, well, it did it. Well, of course it didn't, you idiot. Yeah. You didn't give it to like 2/3 of the people out there. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Dumb. DuckStation has changed its license following an arcade one-up dispute.
Yeah.
All I can say is good on the DuckStation devs for trying to fight back against this kind of thing that happens.
Against companies just abusing open source developers.
Just stealing your stuff. I mean, it happens all the freaking time. Yeah. It's been happening. The Retron years ago when we were talking about the Retron on the show.
Yep.
It was a problem back then. They were stealing code.
And I think the PlayStation Classic licensed whatever PS1 core they used. They just used it poorly. They gave the worst implementation of it.
Yeah. So it's frustrating that DuckStation has to even do this.
Yeah.
I do think it's their correct move is to try to protect themselves a little bit. The downside is that this makes it no longer technically open source. I
thought it was open source, but just not free for use.
So I don't understand how all of the license changes work. But the talk in the Linux community and the article that popped up in our Discord was like, technically this is no longer considered open source, but the source is still there. So I don't really know how it all shakes out legally. But it's frustrating that all of these the people that keep our community afloat are constantly the ones that just have their work straight up stolen for profit by corporations,
which is
with no repercussions because they don't have lawyers on retainer.
Right.
They're just people doing it for funsies.
Yeah.
Nintendo Switch Online added Battletoads Battletoads and Double Dragon.
The official name of the game
Battletoads
is
Double Dragon.
The name of the game is Battletoads Double Dragon.
Isn't it also in Battle Maniacs? Is that not
technically
the
that is a
name?
subtitle, but the official title of the game doesn't actually include that.
Well, that's a dumb name. Battletoads Double Dragon.
Yeah.
Kunio-kun no Dodgeball, Da Yozen in Shugo, Cosmo Gang the Puzzle, and Big Run. I don't know what Big Run is.
It's a Japan-only racing game.
Oh, man, they're really just adding the hits, huh?
Yep.
This is good job, Nintendo. Really making that $80 a year I'm paying you worth it.
And for people who aren't familiar with Cosmo Gang the Puzzle, that's because outside of Japan it was called Pack Attack and it was Pac-Man themed. But for some reason we're only getting the non-Pac-Man themed version.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Very bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Nintendo Switch Online is just depressing to me now. There's so much potential, and every now and then how long has it been since they did those? What do they call them? The SP versions of the games.
That's
where it comes out and it's like those were cool. That was actually a good idea added to it, and they've just kind of stopped doing it. And they're like, here's Big Run.
I will say, even though I'm not personally interested in the game at all, I am impressed they were able to finagle all of the different rights necessary to get Battletoads Double Dragon on the system.
Yeah, that's got to be a weird one.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. LRG is releasing Dreamcast trading cards. These are actually like randomized trading cards that you get in packs. And the packs look like various colors of VMUs, and the box looks like a little Dreamcast, and it's all very cute. And if it's a thing that I could just buy for regular price that they kept in stock for a while, I would be all over it.
Yeah.
But it won't be. They also seem to be selling, I can't tell. It looks like they're selling the booster box, and they also have this thing called a hobby box. So the hobby box is 4 card packs, 5 cards per pack, which is pretty anemic.
Yeah.
For 20 cards total. The booster box is 24 card packs, 5 cards per pack, 120 cards total. That's not a lot of cards. For people that don't know, usually trading card games have 15 cards in the pack.
Well, it's not a game. It's just trading cards.
Right, but you still kind of expect some parity because that would mean that the cost to produce it has got to be relatively similar.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't remember how much they're charging for it, but I think it was stupid.
LRG prices. I do appreciate that they included the piss yellow VMU as one of the colors for the pack.
Of course.
That was the
here it.
That was the color of VMU that Sega had discontinued early on because it was so ugly.
Here it is, $124 for 120 Dreamcast trading cards.
It's just over $1 a card, Justin. That's normal, right?
And what frustrates me about that is that's within the realm of pricing for like new trading card game boxes that release, like your Magic the Gatherings and your Flesh and Bloods and your Yu-Gi-Ohs and your Pokemons and stuff. Except those boxes have a tendency to go up in value and include like 3 times as many cards. I don't know. It's a cool idea that they're botching with their usual business practices.
Yeah. I did see, however, that LRG on Twitter was giving Sony hell about being even worse at their pre-order game than LRG is.
Oh, well, that's something. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company are suing Pal World developer Pocket Pair over multiple patent infringements. There has been a lot of discussion over if they even can sue them.
Yeah.
Especially in our Discord, one of our denizens has been looking kind of closely at it and is like, yeah, I don't know how this case is going to work out. And it makes me wonder if they thought they could just kind of scare them with a Nintendo lawsuit.
Here's my thing. Nintendo's lawyers are historically pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're paid pretty well. And they sat on this for over a year. I can't imagine that Nintendo's lawyers would have sat on this for over a year just to file a lawsuit that was useless. So I think they have something. I think they at least think they have something, or they never would have even bothered.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
I imagine it's going to be a long one because Pocket Pair is like, we are absolutely going to fight this. So,
I expect it to get settled out of court at some point.
Oh, yeah. PS5 firmware update broke several games, including Final Fantasy 16, Death Stranding, and Black Myth Wukong. So thanks, Sony.
Yep.
Thanks for that. Good job. You're only Sony. How could you possibly know how firmware works?
Yeah, they're just tiny little Japanese electronics company.
And then the dumbest news. Special 30th anniversary editions of the PS5 Slim, PS5 Pro, PS Portal, DualSense, and DualSense Edge controllers are all being released, which is cool. That's a cool idea, and they look cool.
Yeah.
But the PS5 Pro is limited to 12,300 units, which I said in the chat, and I'll repeat it here. You might as well release 0.
Yeah,
that is such an anemic amount that it's literally impossible
it's
that
in celebration
anybody who wants
of
it.
the original release date of December 3rd, Justin.
Yeah, that's
how else
cute.
could they do that?
Why don't you make 12 million of them?
So the pre-orders went live today, as of when we're recording. It sold out within seconds, and that was what
on all of the systems or just the Pro?
Everything.
Oh my
and
God.
that's what LRG was mocking, because they did the same bullshit they were doing with the PS5 back when it first released, where they would do these online waiting rooms, and you would have to sit in the waiting room and wait for your turn to try to purchase it and hope that it didn't sell out before then. And apparently the waiting rooms were filling up like 8 hours before the pre-orders went live.
God damn it.
Yeah, it was a mess worldwide. I think they said that there's going to be another pre-order window for like the controllers or something, but that's it. So it was a mess. It was exactly the disaster you expected.
This is what it is this is a marketing stunt.
Yeah.
They don't actually want anybody to get their hands on this thing. It's a marketing stunt, period. Plain and simple.
Yep.
The Pro came out. Everyone was kind of like, okay. And then they went, look, retro stuff.
This is also the first pre-order for the PS5 Pro itself, the non-branded one. And that also sold out. So clearly they are at least making as much as they want to make off of it.
I do have one final piece of news that I want to add here, which puts it a little out of order with the rest of our news, but because it is also a limited item that may sell out, and I want people to know about it, and I'm excited about finally having a reason to talk about Digimon in the news section on the show. And it is that Bandai has announced crossover Digimon Monster Hunter virtual pets. And I wanted to mention on the show, 1, because it's very exciting, 2, because we just did a Monster Hunter show, and 3, because I can make Saturn listen to me talk about Digimon.
Again.
But so everybody knows, pre-orders are running through sometime in late October, and they are Japan only, so you have to order from a proxy. And they're a little expensive, but they are color LCD screen USB-C rechargeable versions of the Digimon X, which is one of the best virtual pets. And all of the creatures on it are Monster Hunter monsters. And it's so danged cute.
Nice.
And it is up for pre-order now. Of course, so normally the way Premium Bandai does this is they'll have pre-orders up for like 2 months. And then they'll be like, all right, 6 months after they close is when they ship. So basically they get their production run ahead of time. Yeah. This one went live and sold out within an hour, which you'll notice an hour is a lot faster than 2 months. So I did want to mention it on the show for anyone that might be interested in a Monster Hunter virtual pet, that you better get while the getting's good, because they're already on their second wave of pre-orders and it seems to be continuing to sell out. But you might still be able to get one. And if you want one, we have a VPet channel in the Discord and you can come bug me about it and I'll tell you where you can pre-order from.
So why does Bandai Namco just use the name Bandai on their Digimon stuff, but they use the name Bandai Namco literally everywhere else?
So any of their physical product stuff.
Yeah.
Because like their Digimon is the virtual pets are considered in their toy category, even though they kind of ride the line between video game and a toy. But they're considered their toys, and all their toy stuff is always just Bandai.
That's weird.
Or Premium Bandai, which they seem to treat like a different label entirely. Where they sell their extremely expensive toys.
It's just weird to me that they don't just use the Bandai Namco logo for everything.
I don't understand it either. I think it's straight up as them trying to be like, no, this is our like Black Label Reserve Premium Bandai stuff,
Yeah.
and it makes it makes it feel special. I don't know. I have no idea. But Saturn Monster Hunter Virtual Pets. Okay. I know, it's so exciting. Try to contain yourself.
I'm trying.
Just It's exciting. Okay.
I believe you.
But which brings us to the topic at hand, which is the PlayStation 3.
Oh.
For synopsis, I know. For synopsis, Saturn just wrote $599, which was more money in 2006.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is when this system came out. November 11th, 2006 in Japan, November 17th, 2006 in North America, 23rd of March, 2007 in PAL territories. India got it in April of 7, Indonesia October 09, and Brazil in August of 2010. Yeah. A mere 4 years later. Obviously the system is no longer on the market.
What?
I know, it's shocking. We're on the PlayStation 5 now.
So I went to the government's inflation calculator website, and $599 in November of 2006 is the same buying power as $935 today.
First of all, what the fuck is going on? Second of all, that's insane. Yeah. The PS3 was discontinued March 2017. The last physical game released was Shakedown Hawaii on September 28th, 2022. Last mainstream physical release was FIFA 19 on September 28th, 2018. Yeah. Let's talk specs, and then we can get into first encounters and stuff. This famously had a 3.2 gigahertz IBM Cell processor, which is a PowerPC chip, and made the system very, I don't want to say difficult, but different to develop for. And is also why, suspected why a few titles are still kind of trapped on PS3.
Despite the fact that fan-made emulators run so well.
Yep, which doesn't make sense. It has 256 megabytes, pardon me, not gigabytes, megabytes of XDR DRAM and 256 megabytes of GDDR3 VRAM. The GPU is a 550 megahertz NVIDIA RSX reality synthesizer. It came with a few different sizes of standard hard drive. It famously included a Blu-ray optical drive, and the original model was compatible with lots of stuff. Yeah. Memory sticks, SD cards, compact flash, PS2 memory cards worked on it.
Only with an adapter.
Right, if you had the adapter, which was difficult to come
expensive.
by. USB 2.0, Bluetooth 2.0, it had HDMI out, optical, Toslink, all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
This was obviously meant to compete with the Xbox 360 that had come out a year earlier, and the Wii, which released around the same time.
Yep.
On the market, the handheld market kind of staggers across this era. Yep. The Nintendo DS and PSP were kind of around for the PS3, but then we were transitioning into the 3DS and the Vita by the end of the PS3's lifespan. But just to kind of paint the market at the time,
and also the PS2 had some staying power. It was still getting games until pretty late in the PS3's life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because
on the other hand, the Xbox and the GameCube did not have staying power. They did not.
I was well into my GameStop tenure, and I guess this is getting into first encounters. I was well into my GameStop tenure when the PS3 came out. I remember us doing pre-orders for it, and I remember it being such a stupidly high amount of money that it was a joke.
Right.
The release was a joke. Yep. Like, it sold out, but only because we got like 4 of them, and nobody was asking about them. Nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
Everyone was stoked on the Wii. We had lines out the fucking door. Nobody wanted the PlayStation.
The Wii was half the price. The Xbox 360 had a model that was half the price, the arcade edition.
Yes.
So it was a lot of money.
Like, once you decked out your 360, the cost got closer.
Yeah. especially
just
if
the
you
fact
need the
that you
Wi-Fi
could,
adapter and shit like that.
yeah, but just the fact that you could kind of buy it piecemeal, made it easier pill to swallow for a lot of
more
people.
attainable.
And also, there were people buying the arcade models of the 360 and just playing Xbox Live Arcade stuff
just
with a memory card.
I
Because
had one friend who bought
you know,
a 360 arcade edition and used it exclusively to play Miss Pac-Man. And I remember telling her there are cheaper ways for you to play Miss Pac-Man.
No, shut up. let her have it. So the PS3 came out and it was a joke. The price was a joke. It was very much like I was not working at a game store when the Neo Geo was out, but I suspect we treated it very much the same way people probably treated the Neo Geo, where it was like, oh, Mr. fucking fancy over here coming in to buy his PlayStation 3 games.
Hey, the difference is Neo Geo got no shelf space in game stores, and PS3 definitely did.
I was going to say, the weird part was that it still took up a third of the store, and we never really understood why. Now, later, the Slim came out, the PS, and it could have just been where we were.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the PS3 sold well enough that they didn't immediately take it off the market, so it sold some.
Yeah.
But at least in my area, at my store, like, it was the joke console. Nobody fucking wanted this thing.
It sold really well early on too. So
yeah, that's what
but it might just be
I must have been in a market
thing.
anomaly. Yeah, for sure. I was in kind of a suburban area, well outside the city. Right. So I don't know, man. Yeah. I don't know.
I didn't get one to launch. I was particularly angry at Sony at the time because they had just led to the death of Working Designs, and they had their business practices had been killing all these small publishers, and then they also announced that price, and I was like, no, sir, thank you, but no.
Yep.
And then at the same time they were announcing how expensive it was going to be, companies like Namco and Square Enix were saying, oh, we're going to put a lot of our games on Xbox next generation. I was like, oh, well, then I will just get that instead. And so it was a while before I got a PS3. I did not get a PS3 until I was able to get a used Super Slim PS3.
Mine was, I think, the original Slim.
And
I don't know. Was the Super Slim the one with the like little George Foreman grill looking slide open top?
Super Slim.
I got the Slim before that. That's the PS3 I ended up with.
I had a few friends that had a PS3, so I got to play it a few times. And I remember not being super impressed at what it was for the price, so I held off for as long as I could.
Yeah. Tell us about the development of the PS3. Surely it had no weird bumps along the way or bizarre design choices.
Well, I mean, it yeah. So the work on what would become the cell processor began back in March 2001, which is barely a year after the Japanese release of the PS2. The chip was co-developed by Sony, Toshiba, and IBM. And despite the fact that most of us just think of the PS3 when we think of the cell processor, it was used in other things. IBM had a supercomputer they called the Roadrunner, which used a combination of cell processors and AMD Opteron chips, which is a stupid name for a supercomputer.
Yeah.
Also, several IBM server blades used cell processors, and Toshiba used it in their televisions for some reason. Maybe that's why the early Toshiba smart TVs were so expensive.
Yeah.
The official announcement for the PS3 came at E3 2005. This is when the goofy boomerang controller was shown.
For anyone that never saw the original PS3 controller, I need you to do two things. Yeah. One, I need you to know this was real. They really showed this thing. They really, I swear to God, we were all sitting there watching it live and they unveiled it like they had created the greatest fucking controller in the world. And literally everyone was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, everybody was laughing
It was not a joke. It was not a prank. I don't care what, because I've heard revisionists be like, oh, it was an early prototype. They weren't really going to use that. It was just, and I'm like, no.
No, they showed this off.
This was it, dude. Yeah. It was at E3. Yes. Second of all, go look it up. If you've never seen it, go look it up. Oh my God.
My favorite.
It also had they used the Spider-Man 2 font for the PlayStation 3 logo.
Well, they did at launch too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very, very weird. Sony was in a weird design space.
Yes.
For some reason. I don't know what they were trying to make happen, but I feel like the PS5, like Sony now is very much like, just do what works. do what works, add a couple bells and whistles, call it a premium experience, and we're good. But in the PS3, they hadn't found that, and they were trying to do some sort of fucking they were trying to do something, right? They're just in a strange design space, strange headspace.
I think they were angling towards eventually reaching that PS9 orb.
Yeah,
they're like, we have to make faster steps in order to get there by 9.
Everything was very post Matrix looking. It's very weird.
I do appreciate that some some individuals since then have tried to recreate the boomerang on Etsy and shit. I am a fan of that. I want more of people making stupid ass controllers.
It was so dumb, and it was an ugly ass color. It was this champagne gray gold looking thing,
and one of the circle button is hanging off the side practically.
Yes, what?
It's so dumb. I cannot believe that this made it through R&D to actual fabrication and display to the public without anybody stopping and being like, hold on. Why?
This looks stupid as fuck. Yeah, if you want something that really epitomizes the tone of the aughts, it's the original PS3 controller. Just looking at it, you're like, oh, whoa, that's way over designed and weird and strangely smooth.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how the grip on it would work at all.
It wouldn't.
Just looking at it,
a steering wheel.
I can't imagine how I would use those analog sticks without just hating my life.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. So also shown at E3 2005 was preview footage of Metal Gear Solid 4 and some other launch games, and also none of them were running on a PS3. They were all running on PCs with, quote, similar specs to what the proposed model would be.
This is what we call, outside of the industry, lying.
Or false advertising.
Lying to people. Yeah.
Also, the infamous Final Fantasy VII tech demo, which did not lead to a remake of the game for another 10 plus years, was also not actually running on a PS3, despite supposedly being evidence of what PS3 games could look like.
In other words, it's a movie they showed you of what they want PlayStation games to look like.
Also, the initial demo units that they showed at these trade shows, along with the goofy boomerang controller, had 2 HDMI outputs, and they never explained why.
Huh.
And I want to know what Sony was thinking that would have needed 2 HDMI outputs. Were we expecting dual monitor output?
One HDMI was the actual HDMI, and the other one went to a little computer they had under the table that was playing the videos that it was showing.
Well, no, because they didn't even have it plugged in when they were showing the videos.
Weird. I don't know.
They in both ports were labeled HDMI output and HDMI output 2.
Is it possible they were trying to do the Xbox One plug your TV in through this, and it's
they said
kind of
output on
multimedia
both
thing?
of them, not input.
Oh, I don't know.
And so I am I want to know what Sony was thinking. Did they really think we were going to have multi-monitor output on this thing? And if so,
I think it's more likely. I mean, you saw the controller. Enough drugs were being done that they're like, "What if we had 2 HDMIs?"
They were just throwing everything at the wall.
Why? And they were like, "I don't fucking know."
And also, when they had first shown it off, they said that the 20 gig model wouldn't have HDMI at all.
Yeah, which
didn't end up happening either. So it was just very strange early ideas there.
Let's get into launch, which you are reminding us here in the notes. It launched at $599 United States dollars.
Well, that was because at E3 05, I think it was, maybe 06, when they were finally showing the price of the unit, famously, actually, I say famously, but I've forgotten who it was that said it. It might have been Kaz Hirai. Got up on the stage and said in a very proud voice, $599 US.
Yep. Well, when did they come out and say that they expect you to get a second job to pay for a PlayStation 3?
I think it was at the same trade show.
Because they came out and they said that you should get a second job to buy a PS3.
And granted, this is several years before Xbox came out and said, we have a device for people who want a cheaper unit. It's the Xbox 360. So really, it's just all dumbness from every game company from this point forward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they didn't know what the fuck to do. This whole generation smacks of, we're not sure what to do, and we're just going to do random shit. And some of the time it worked out. Right. Even Nintendo was like, we have no fucking idea, dude. And it really worked out for them.
Right.
But clearly they didn't have any idea either.
So the initial reports stated that many of the units sold at launch in Japan were purchased by scalpers, who then resold the units on eBay and Yahoo Auctions. So this is not a new phenomenon for people who are trying to buy PS5 Pros. So the software sales at launch were much lower than the hardware sales at launch because, again, scalpers. Media Create reported that 81,639 PS3s sold on day one in Japan. The North American launch also had some issues with customer media reports saying that customers were shot. People in lines were getting robbed. There were fights over available units. And there was also a drive-by shooting at a game store.
I remember that one. Yeah.
But
it was kind of a scary time to work in video game retail. Especially with the amount of Wii-related riots that seemed to be happening.
Right. I couldn't find any specific numbers for North American launch, though, as far as units sold.
Interesting. I feel like, I don't know. It makes me feel like Sony withheld some information because it didn't go very well. But I know in the long term it did sell well.
And the European release was much less controversial. Also, much smoother because it was almost a year later. They said an estimated 600,000 units were sold in Europe within 48 hours, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was $599 US in Europe since they don't use US dollars. So maybe it was a little more manageable, or maybe they just had more units available. I'm not sure.
Well, let's talk launch titles because obviously a system people are getting shot over has to have some amazing titles. So let's see what we got here. Call of Duty 3, Madden 07, NBA 2K7, NHL 2K7, Tiger Woods 2007, Ridge Racer 7.
That was the highest selling game,
Ridge Racer's pretty fun.
Marvel Ultimate
There
Alliance.
are some good games in here.
Was it Genji Days of the Blade? Was that the good game?
No. Resistance Fallen Man was pretty fun. It was very indicative of first-person shooters at the time, of like this sort of gray-brown.
Yeah. If
that is the game, I think it was. Tony Hawk's Project 8, which is one of the games that helped to sink the Tony Hawk franchise.
So when I was doing research for this and getting the list of game releases, and I saw Tony Hawk's Project 8, I don't remember this game, so I thought it wasn't an actual game release. I thought somehow I'd gotten linked to an article for a game that never released.
No, it was.
Okay.
It wasn't. It was bad. It was bad. And also, many of these either were already on other platforms or were also on PS2.
Yes, that is true.
So, just not a ton going on here.
In Europe, it launched alongside Sonic 06.
They had MotorStorm and Virtua Fighter 5, Virtua Tennis 3, World Snooker Championship. Need for Speed Carbon was okay. Yeah. That was an okay game. Fight Night Round 3, just not a lot for being a year later.
Yeah, and
kind of an anemic launch. I remember there was a game, it was supposed to be launched, and then it got delayed, then it ultimately got canceled. But it was their big 6-axis game where there's like you controlled a dragon or some shit. Oh, what was that game called? And they were like really touting it as like utilizing all of the technology in the PlayStation 3, and then it just got canceled.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, God. What was it, man? I don't remember either. That's how impactful it was. I don't know. Like, even when the PS3 was out, we were all like, why the fuck would you buy a PS3?
Yeah.
Like, there was nothing on it.
I thought Lair was the big dragon 6-axis.
Lair, that was it. Did that come out?
It came out in
but it was like way
August,
later, right? Okay. That must be what I'm thinking of then. Lair. Yeah. And it was a 6-axis controlled game, and you controlled a dragon.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video of it and thinking that it looked awful. Yeah.
I do also pretty distinctly remember PSN being kind of a shit show compared to how smooth Xbox Live was running at the time.
It was available at launch, but it didn't have anything for sale at launch. And they did eventually add some like indie style games and small budgety games, and then full price games were a few years later, just like on Xbox 360. But I do remember my friends that did get PS3s were constantly complaining about the online service on it.
Yeah. Even when I got my Slim later, I still was like, this kind of sucks. Like, it kind of doesn't work very well.
It was funny because my friends that got PS3s would simultaneously brag about how PSN didn't cost anything, while also complaining about how garbage it was.
How shitty it was.
And I was like, I feel like these things might be related.
Yeah. Let's talk actual design of the system. We have the 6-axis and the DualShock 3. It's very much the PS2 controller, but again, but now there's no wires. You charge it with a USB-B cable.
No, it's a USB Mini B.
USB Mini B, which is the dumbest cable.
Yeah, it is. It did have the pressure sensitivity of the PS2 controller, unlike the PS4 and PS5 controllers.
Yeah. Pretty famously, the 6-axis launched. There was no rumble when it launched. There was no DualShock 3 that did not come until later, and that was a big. You don't realize how much rumble can affect an experience until you don't have it. And this whole generation was big for multi-platform stuff. Like, I don't have data on this, but I feel like there were more multi-platform games between PS3 and Xbox 360 than it seemed like there were in the previous generation. Discounting like the obvious things like sports or whatever. And so I don't know, going back and forth between the systems, because eventually I had all of them. You missed it. I missed it at the time. Anyway.
I remember playing a friend's PS3 shortly after launch, and they just had the 6-axis controllers because that was what came with it,
which were insanely light.
Yes, that was my thing. Was these are so light. I was like, maybe if they just add rumble, it won't be so fucking light, and it won't feel so bad. But then they did release the DualShock 3, and it was still super light.
The battery always sucked on PS3 controllers. I remember that being a major complaint. They took a long time to charge too. I had constant controller issues with my PS3. Now, when I got my Slim, I played the shit out of it. Don't get me wrong. I was like mainlined into Dark Souls. I was very much played a ton of PS3. Was it?
I thought the original Dark Souls was on 360.
I think Demon Souls had a 360. That's the one. Was Dark Souls on both? Either way, I was playing Demon Souls and Dark Souls on my PS3. But I had constant controller complaints. It did use other OS
briefly,
which was there. For a little bit there.
Yeah, that was their option to install either Linux or FreeBSD on the PS3.
Yep,
and
make it more functional.
Yeah, which was neat. It was good for making indie games or installing emulators or whatever.
Sure, and then they took it away.
They took it away. They just released a firmware update in April 2010 that just erased it and erased your Linux partition. And people sued Sony over it. There was a class action suit, and eventually a judge dismissed the case with prejudice in 2011. Only for another judge to overturn that dismissal and say that Sony was in fact at fault for removing this functionality. And in the end, Sony paid $65 to anyone who had other OS installed. That was
$65 for deleting your Linux partition.
Enjoy. Apparently, the original settlement would have given so much money to both Sony and the lawyers that the judge dismissed it and insisted on a higher payout. And the higher payout was $65.
Jeez.
So I can't imagine how bad the initial settlement was.
I do remember it being a thing at the time that PS3 hard drives were harder to replace because Xbox 360 hard drives just clipped on the top of the system.
Yeah, but the PS3 hard drive, you just had to open that one little panel and you could put any hard drive in there, whereas the Xbox 360 you had to buy a proprietary hard drive.
But let me tell you something about the people that were coming into GameStop. Saturn, they're not taking a screw out.
Right.
Relax. Take a screw out and pull a little drive sled out. Hell no. I just want to click it on the top. That's what I want to do.
I want to spend more to do less work.
It was kind of bizarre at the time that they even sold an Xbox 360 with no hard drive.
They just had a memory card.
Like in retrospect, very weird, but it sold. The thing fucking sold.
Because it was cheap.
As far as reception, it did lag behind the 360 for a while. I think by the end, did it ever surpass it?
Ultimately, it did.
It did, right?
Surpass the 360 worldwide, but by a tiny. Actually, let me double check that because I've been told in the past that it surpassed it by a tiny margin, but that might not be correct. I know in the US the 360 maintained the lead, but worldwide PS3 had the lead.
Yeah. There were
it did just barely. By the end, the PS3 sold 87.4 million units. The 360 sold 84 million units.
There were some PS3 exclusive games that have remained PS3 exclusive that were worth checking out. You had a bunch of Ratchet and Clank stuff on there.
Yeah.
You had the Resistance games were a big deal for a little bit there. I think they made 3 or 4 of those. And they were kind of there was the Insomniac games shooters, and they were kind of treated as like Sony's version of Halo for a little bit there. Right. You had your standard stuff, your Ridge Racers. You had a Little Big Planet. Never really seemed to make the splash they wanted it to, but it was a thing for a bit.
Yeah, I kept forgetting that game existed.
I think they still had some SOCOM games coming out in the PS3 era. Some of the last ones. I think the last one might have been on like PSP. I don't know that they made one later than that. But I don't know. Demon Souls, we already mentioned that one. That was a big one for me personally. MotorStorm was kind of a big deal. I played and really, really enjoyed Metal Gear Solid 4, which was and continues to be, PS3 exclusive.
So possibly not for much longer.
Hopefully not for much longer. I really, really like Metal Gear Solid 4. It's maximum batshit insane. The game is utterly fucking bonkers.
I struggle with the PS3 just because there aren't any exclusives on it that I particularly care about.
Yeah, there's a good amount of shooters between, Killzone, SOCOM, Resistance, and then Gran Turismo. So that's racing. So neither one of those are really Saturn games.
I think the closest I got to picking up an exclusive was the Uncharted series, and then I watched a video of it and was like, nah.
Oh yeah, Uncharted. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's gotten re-released since, but
I think
Uncharted
there was
an
exclusive
big thing at the time.
Ratchet and Clank game on there at one point.
We had Ratchet and Clank, A Crack in Time, and then there was All for One, and also Into the Nexus. I think there was 3, but then I think some of them got different versions. I don't know. I'm trying to look it up now. There's a shitload. There's an insane amount of them. There's a lot of Ratchet and Clank there. I don't know. It never felt like the PS3 got to enjoy the same niche that the PS2 did.
Right.
When it existed.
Oh, yeah. Well, the PS2 so grossly outsold its competition that tons of
that not only did
it
get everything, but especially if you're like, I like kind of Japanese centric gaming, then you didn't buy an Xbox.
Right. Whereas in the 360 era, you had more companies that were willing to target both the Xbox and the PlayStation, just because the sales on the units were similar enough that they didn't want to lose out on customers.
For sure. The Infamous games were a pretty big deal. Yeah. There was a God of War on PS3. I think there's only one of them, but there was a God of War. Yeah. It's just I don't know. There's that Twisted Metal reboot. Remember that?
No. I focused so little on the PS3. Even once I got it, I think I've maybe put 40 hours into my PS3 the entire time I've owned it.
Wow. I played a huge amount of PS3.
It was just not... that whole era of gaming never really clicked with me much. And I think I just got my fill on the 360 when I had that.
3D Dot Game Heroes is still the... I was going to say outside of Demon Souls, but that got a remake. Yeah. Is kind of the premier PS3 exclusive game that is still stuck on the PS3.
I do have that one, and I've tried to start it several times, and it's just never clicked with me.
Oh, it's I love that game. That like 3D Dot Game Heroes and Metal Gear Solid 4. That is enough. From those two games alone are enough for me to keep my PS3 around. Although God knows how long it's been since it was actually plugged in.
Right.
But just not having those anywhere else is too upsetting to me. I need those two games in my life. They're both weird and dumb,
right.
And I love them. And they're weird and dumb in very strange and different ways. Where were we notes wise? Because now I've gone off on a tangent. Accessories and stuff.
You stopped looking at the notes when you were talking about exclusives because all I put in there was gray-brown military shooters.
Yeah, no, I'm off script. I said Resistance and Killzone. Okay. And then what is that one game with the creepy puppet? Is that what you wrote?
I think that's the Little Big Planet.
Oh yeah, Little Big Planet. I've never heard him described as a creepy puppet, but he is kind of a creepy little puppet thing. Hardware iterations. You had the original fat PS3, which at the time was sort of the joke version of the PS3 before the air quotes slim real version of it came out that people could fucking afford. But it eventually became the sought after version because it had some amount of backward compatibility.
Not all of them though.
Yeah, the big ones, right? The larger hard drives, was that?
No. The 20 gig model also had full backward compatibility.
Which one did not have backward compatibility?
So at launch, both models had backwards compatibility. And then they released the revision, which still had partial software backwards compatibility. And then they released another revision that took away backwards compatibility in various hard drive sizes. So there was a mix of which ones did or didn't have backwards compatibility throughout until they discontinued the FAT.
It's not hard to see why this didn't come out the gate crushing the competition as a platform. I mean, weird revisions that keep taking stuff from you, not an amazing launch lineup, insanely high price, weird technology for developers to interact with. It's just Sony was just making a lot of bad moves for a little bit here. When the Slim came out, like for me and a lot of people I knew, that's when the PS3 released.
Yeah, that's when it became more viable.
Yeah, it was a thing where I was like, oh, maybe I'll pick up a PS3. Now, granted, it was 2009. It was 3 years later.
But for me, the Slim is when I lost interest in it. Because I was like, oh, really? So I can't even play PS2 games on it anymore? Like, what's the point? Like, that was the whole thing that I did with my PS2 at launch was just play PS1 games. And now if I get a PS3, I can't even play my PS1 or PS2 games on there. What's the point? Of course, you could play PS1 games. I just didn't know that.
Yeah. I guess because I worked at a GameStop, PS2s weren't a concern. Like we held the door open to the office with a PS2. Well, there were so many PS2s for free, but that we didn't care.
Yeah, my thing was PS2s were so error prone that I wanted to get a PS3 that was backwards compatible. Though of course PS3 is also error prone. So
yeah, it is indeed. I've heard a lot of people that get the backward compatible model and then it's just kind of more headache than it even ends up being worth. And so now, it's my point being that it's not any wonder that when it came out it didn't immediately crush the Xbox.
Now, were you still working at a game store when the Super Slim came out?
That was 2012. Okay. No, I was gone by then. I was at Circuit City.
I am curious who was in the market for a PS3 in 2012 and was willing to buy the 12 gigabyte model they released.
This whole generation got weird fucking late hardware revisions. There was the Wii
Mini
that had the Wii Mini that didn't play GameCube games. There was the later revisions of the Xbox 360.
Yeah, the 360e.
Yeah, and then there was the Super Slim for the PS3. It's just all very weird.
Some of the pre-mini Wiis couldn't play GameCube games.
Oh, really? I did not realize
There's some original shaped Wiis that don't have GameCube controller ports, and they won't load the disc.
Bizarre. Yeah, this whole generation got a lot of SKUs. Yeah. All of this hardware had multiple different revisions, and it's, again, I think it still points to everyone in the market at this time was like, we don't really know what the fuck to do with video games. We're just not sure. Each company seemed to think they were going to evolve in a different, divergent way. Right. And then halfway through this console cycle, Sony was like, well, we'll just copy what Nintendo did. Nintendo went, oh yeah, maybe we don't really give a shit about motion controls, even though it's the entire point to buy the system. And then I don't know what the fuck Xbox did. They just kept selling Xbox Live subscriptions and didn't give a shit. Yeah, they were just coasting through it. And so this was just a really rocky, in retrospect, anyway, really rocky, really weird generation.
I think Microsoft's thing was they were seeing that everybody was using their 360s exclusively as Netflix machines. And they were like, shit, we just need to pivot to this like media direction. And that was a mistake. And Nintendo was...
Eventually they went the Kinect route and it got weird. It was just, this was a very, very much, I think, an experimental time in the market where everyone, like, it was just late enough that everyone could kind of tell that, like, hey, stuff's going online, streaming's becoming a thing, apps, downloading programs to your system is a thing.
Were you working at GameStop when Devil May Cry 4 came out?
Yeah, I don't know.
I remember people were super pissed off that the PS5 or PS3 version required you to install it to the hard drive.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Whereas the 360 version could just play off of the disc, and on PS,
but people were mad about that.
Yeah, I knew some people were very upset about that.
Because this generation kind of straddles the smartphone being a thing. Right. You know, when this generation launched, people didn't really necessarily expect to be installing apps on stuff that wasn't a computer on a desk. And then by the time it was going out the door, everyone expected everything to have apps and app stores and online functionality and all of this online infrastructure. And it just made this entire generation super fucking weird. And trying to do everything for everyone, but not being built for it at all.
Like they had to
lots of
they had to change the firmware on these systems so many times, just try to keep up with society at the time.
Oh yeah, and absolutely. But again, more than just that, I think Sony in particular, like out of the gate with the PS3, was like, you could just feel that they didn't quite know what to do with video games. They're like, all right, we released an insanely successful console. It plays a game off a disc and it's got a controller and it puts it on your TV. What do we fucking do now? We just do that again? And the answer is like, yes, that's what we want. Do it again.
With the PS2, Sony had successfully released this console that was very popular, but also could play DVD movies. So this was a media entertainment system that they wanted everybody to have. And with the PS3, they were like, what if we did that, but it was also a computer in some way? And
and granted, a lot of people did buy a PS3, especially later, because it played Blu-rays.
Yeah, absolutely.
I watched my PS3 was my Blu-ray player, and I spent a lot of time watching Blu-rays on it.
Yeah, several of my friends used it as their Blu-ray player more than they used it as a video game console, which only made me question, why did you spend $599 on this?
Because it also plays 3D Dot Game Heroes in that creepy puppet game, Saturn. Duh. I don't know. I guess my point is like I ended up playing a shitload of the PS3, but this whole generation was so fucking weird, and Sony had no goddamn idea what they wanted. By mid-generation, they were releasing fucking Wii remotes. Let us not forget
the Move controller, which is still available on the PS5.
Why?
Because it works with PSVR.
Oh God, I forget. What are you doing, Sony? Just stop that shit. Why don't you quit fucking making VRs and portals and just lower the cost of your goddamn system, okay? Why don't you just do that?
Yeah. And this was still during the era of the weird controllers. So you had the Move controller and all the other weird DDR and Rock Band and shit. And also at launch they had, the PS2 memory card adapter. And just all kinds of weird accessories and bullshit that you had to buy in order to get all of the functionality of your system. It felt like too much for me at the time.
It especially with, this is very much the peripheral era. All three systems, I mean, even if you didn't have a Wii, like if God forbid you had Rock Band or Guitar Hero or both, or SingStar, or and then you got your remotes because it's a Blu-ray player, so you want a Blu-ray remote, and then you had some more on the list. You have the Tony Hawk Shred board. Oh boy, like just the amount of insane. Just
the one that I never got was the controller for that Buzz game. Because, like, can't you just use a gamepad?
Oh, yeah, it was a buzzer. Yeah. Like a game show buzzer.
Just use a gamepad.
Shut up. They want their buzzer, Saturn. I don't know. It's all
And then
just
there was
really
the Wonder
weird.
Book. Do you remember seeing the Wonder Book?
No.
It was a book. It was a fucking book that connected Bluetooth to your system, and it was like a storybook thing, and it would interact. It's the weirdest shit.
This was, again, in the 06 to 08 range, the way we interact with technology and also the way we socialize completely upended itself all at once, because this is also not only smartphones, app stores, this is also social media, and it all just came crashing in, and suddenly everything that wasn't a fucking iPhone, people were looking around and being like, well, what do we fucking do now?
When the PS3 released, I remember several of my friends were harassing me to try to convince me to make a MySpace account. And by the time the PS3 ended, it already had functionality to send information to Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, it was an insane system from the start to the end. And it feels like it never really figured out what it wanted to be.
It wanted to be a 3D Game Heroes box.
And then by the time it started selling well, it was like, oh, it turns out people just want like
video games, but
things they just want, video games. But again, the thing we all avoided for this whole generation for so long. No, we just want games again. Just give us games. Make another one of the game series that I like and give it to me for a reasonable price and include all of the game at once. And then I'll have it and I can enjoy it.
No.
And then when you do it again, I'll give you more money for it. Can we just do that? Please, can we go back? No. As far as Legacy, they continue making PlayStations. Yeah. I can't get them to stop. I've tried everything I know. They won't quit making
yelled,
them.
I've screamed. I've bitched. All the things.
As far as the current state of PS3 stuff, RPCS 3 works great. It's a great emulator. Obviously, you need a little bit of you can't just run it on that old $20 Dell you got from an office sale in 2009 or whatever. Like, you're going to need, a not good machine, but, a slightly modern one. But it does work great. It has really good compatibility. I don't think it's quite like 100% or anything, but it's getting pretty close. Yeah. And also setting it up has become a lot less of a pain in the ass compared to what it used to be. So PS3 emulates well. Obviously, we still use similar controller types now, and most controllers have, motion and stuff built in. If you want to try some 6-axis stuff, which I don't know why you would, because no game ever used it in a way that was meaningful.
Justin.
God damn it.
The current RPCS 3 compatibility list says that 0 games don't load at all. And 2.3% of games will only get to the intro or menu screens. 28.19% of games will at least get in game, and nearly 70% of games are fully playable.
So it's pretty good. We're looking 70% is pretty damn good. Collecting it's still pretty cheap. You do have to be, like we were talking about, be careful about which model you get.
Yes.
And the capabilities of that model. Now, granted, if you're finding them now, it's going to be a slim or a super slim because the original models have become valuable collector's items.
Unless you get them at GameStop. Apparently, they're still like.
Are they?
You can still order because that's where I got my Fat at a GameStop, and it was relatively cheap. It's cheaper than it is on eBay. I'll say that.
Yeah. A lot of PS3 games still remain affordable because many, many, many of them have been remade on PS4 and PS5 and released in collections and such. So it's one of those things where, like, the PS3 is still out there. You can still pick one up. You're probably not picking it up to play Dark Souls or whatever. You'd probably play the remaster. You're probably not picking it up to play Uncharted.
All those were remade on PS4, I think.
Yeah, but if you want to go relive Killzone or Resistance or 3D Dot Game Heroes or
Creepy Puppet
Infamous Creepy Puppet Game, I was looking at a list. Kung Fu Rider, Book of Spells.
That's one of the Wonder Book games.
We got the Wonder Book games. Here's a game just called The Shoot.
Oh, good, The Shoot.
You can play The Shoot. You can play Snake Ball.
Yeah,
there you go. All wonderful. Wonderful exclusive games. As far as final thoughts, The PS3 was a system that when I got mine, I played the shit out of it. But all the titles I was playing on it, with the exception of 3D Dot Game Heroes and Metal Gear Solid 4, have become available elsewhere in superior form to the point that I'm not going to go back to the PS3 version. I see no point in doing it. For a period there, it did become kind of my go-to machine just for anything multi-platform. Because I don't know, it's just what I had. It's what I was already playing, I guess. I'm not sure. I when 360 came out, I played a shitload of it. I mean, huge amounts of the Xbox 360. But by the time I'd gotten my PS3, I was very much like, no, I'm fully PS3 ecosystem now. And I don't know what caused that switch. And I don't know that it's anything tangible. I think a lot of it might have just been that I quit working at a game store. I moved out and I just wasn't playing. I don't know. I was playing less online games, maybe. I'm not sure what it was. Really, I played them both quite a bit. But anything multi-platform, I ended up getting on PS3 by the end of that generation, despite thinking it was kind of a joke when it launched. So a bit of a turnaround for me.
I briefly tried to switch games from my 360 to my PS3 when I was upset at Microsoft about something. And then just using the PS3 controller was like, fuck it, I'll just play them on PC.
At the time, I had a PC, but it was my first real gaming-capable PC, and it was an Acer I bought with my graduation money in 2007, used off of eBay, and then put a graphics card in it and replaced the power supply.
Acer's well known for their gaming prowess.
Yeah, so you can imagine how my PC gaming went. And I kept that machine well into the 2010s. By the end, I was using it as a BSD server, and it had so many hard drives packed into it that I had to have external case fans zip tied to the hard drives because it would and I couldn't put the side panel on, or it would immediately overheat. And so yeah, that's where it ended up for me. But yeah, I don't know.
I sent you a picture of the Wonder Book.
Oh, I saw it. It looks
It
stupid.
looks real stupid.
I want to be nostalgic for the PS3. I think, I was like a teenager, an elder teenager throughout the time where I was really playing a ton of PS3. It was a cool time in my life.
I was 24 when it came out.
I was moving out. I was going to college. I was kind of starting my adulthood journey.
Yeah.
But I just don't see much reason to actually go back to it anymore, as much as I played the shit out of it at the time.
I was already an adult when the PS3 released, and it never clicked with me during its life.
Yeah. Well, you know what might click with you?
What's that, Justin?
Our Patreon at patreon.com/retrowarriors. You can get all kinds of cool things, but you don't listen to me tell you about it. Listen to Saturn do it.
What? No.
Yeah, you're our guest for this spot, and you have to come in and tell everyone what's on
you'll
the Patreon.
Get pictures of Justin's butt.
No, you won't.
You get a picture.
You won't get that
of Justin's butt.
No, I can't legally disperse that on Patreon. I've checked.
You'll get a picture of Justin's dog.
Uncut. I will send you a picture of my dog. For anyone that wants a picture of my dog, I'll send you a picture. I have 2 dogs. You can pick. If you want both, that's a higher Patreon tier. I can't do them both together.
You get Talking Wizards. You get
Talking
access
Wizards,
to the Talking Wizards Discord channel, where we mostly
the
talk
exclusive.
Food.
Yeah, I was just going to see what was the last thing we talked about in there, and it was Fountain of Gore.
Okay.
Because I had said that I wanted to make a metal band called Fountain of Gore, and someone checked to see if it was an existing metal band.
Sounds like the death metal spinoff of Fountains of Wayne.
And it's a cover band.
The death metal cover band. And you get read along if you pay enough.
Yeah. There you go. So go do that.
Yeah.
The Patreon. Anyway, we want to thank these patrons for the money that they gave us, starting with Chris Courage,
Casey McCoy,
a discontinued cigarette,
Craig C,
the half-minute
That's
hero.
What they call me, Mouse Cop,
David Cavallari,
Dean W. McFarlane,
Jerry Voss, are all people who have given us money, some of them multiple times. So, I mean, we got to be doing something right? Yeah. Like, we're crushing it over here. I think it's the segues. That's what keeps them around.
Definitely it.
You know what's funny is I didn't even like take my PS3 out and dust it off to be like, I want to relive this before we do the show. I was like, nah, I had my fill. I think I remember enough. I'm good enough. It'll be all right. What a weird ass console generation. So fucking weird. You know, I was wondering the other day how long it's going to take for us to get from the aughts for them to feel like a distinctly different period of time from the 2020s, you know? Because like, or I mean from the 2010s, because like the aughts at this point definitely feel like a distinctly different period of time than the 2020s, but the 2010s, it still feels like now times, but it's not now times, Saturn. It's old times.
That's 5 years ago.
It's long ago
That's
times.
half a decade ago.
Different times. So I don't know. Maybe it's
pre-COVID
just me getting old. Yeah, it was before. Really, COVID is the defining factor of the 2020s.
Yeah, it's a good thing that COVID happened right when the decade changed, because that helped us differentiate things.
Really, put a end cap on the 2010s. Anyway, thank you for listening to this show, and we're gonna do more shows next week. I know. I'm as shocked as you are. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, and as always, let us cling together.